Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to look at a chart and a person that is in the news that I feel like her chart is so interesting, and it's Kamala Harris, now chosen as Biden's running mate. So she has the potential to be the Vice President of the United States. Now, I thought I might compare her chart to Mike Pence, but we don't have a birth time for Mike Pence, so it's not going to be as clear. But let's delve in here and take a look at Kamala's chart, because she has some really interesting things going on that I think are going to give us a lot of information on what is to come in the future. So putting up her chart, I have that her ascendant is at 1 degree of Gemini, and Rahu, her natal Rahu, is also at 1 degree of Gemini. And what does that mean? It means she has a life of fate and destiny, that she may make specific plans to go a certain direction, but there is a destiny that may take her life in a whole different way. That is the power of having Rahu or Ketu on your ascendant, and especially the same degree makes it incredibly intense. What a life of destiny. Now, I find it very interesting as well that as I speak, transiting Rahu is about return to this degree. As I speak right now, Rahu's around 2 degrees of Gemini, and it's about to be 1 degree Gemini, because remember, the nodes travel backwards in just a week or so. This is amazing. Major events are due to happen in her life in the next month. And I even saw something even more telling. September 9th, when Mars stations at 4 degrees of Aries, look at her chart. What do you see at 4 degrees of Aries? Her moon. Also, notice her sun is exactly opposed the moon at 4 degrees of Libra. Now, when I see the sun and moon, she is born under a beautiful full moon, which gives a great deal of awareness and vision. In Vedic astrology, we look at the full moon as a bright moon, which means the mind is aware and conscious and has light. But transiting Mars, coming up and stationing at 4 degrees, conjuncting the moon, opposing the sun, something big is due to happen. Plus, simultaneously, we have the transit of Rahu transiting over her ascendant and natal Rahu. So she has a nodal return. Rahu on Rahu, Ketu on Ketu. I've often said, when the nodes return back to the starting point that they were when you were born, that you are reminded of who you are and what you're here to do in this lifetime. Because if the nodes are our destiny, which they are, when they return, you're awakened to what your destiny is all about. So I find this quite interesting. But the anger of Mars, transit of Mars stationing on her moon and opposing her sun, means she is very angry about some things going on in the world, and she will be provoked, and she may say things maybe she wished she didn't say. Why do I say that? Well, because she has Mars in the 2nd house. The 2nd house is our speech. And the fact that her Mars is debilitated at its exact degree of debilitation. Remember, Mars is debilitated in the sign of Cancer. But the exact degree is 28 degrees of Cancer. And her Mars sits at 27 degrees 56 minutes, exactly within a few minutes of its exact degree of debilitation, which in the 2nd house, she may say things because the second house is our voice, things that she wished she hadn't said. But notice where the moon is, in Aries. This is telling because when a planet is debilitated, but it is in a mutual exchange of signs with another planet, such as the moon being in Aries, ruled by Mars, and Mars being in Cancer, ruled by the moon, they're in what we call a parivartana. And this is actually a cancellation of the debilitation. And what it actually begins to process as Mars being in Aries and the moon being in Cancer. So they do exchange signs, and their placements become, over time, more like the reversal. So if you look at the moon, it is in the 11th house. The 11th house can deal with, the 5th house and the 11th house, believe it or not, deal with politics. So do the signs Leo and Aquarius, because it's the 5th sign Leo, the 11th sign Aquarius. They deal a lot with politics. And go figure, she has her sun in the 5th house. And she also has Venus. Venus, ruler of the 5th, it's in Leo. So she is a politician. She loves the law, to change things, to make things better. She also has her Saturn in the 9th house, which is the house of the legal system, the law. And yes, she knows her legal system. She's a lawyer. She is going in politics, running as vice president, has a potential one day to be the president of the United States. Imagine that. Finally, a woman. But let's look deeper into her chart to see what may be evolving. Because looking at her sun, now the sun is our sense of power, but it is in Libra. Of course, this is a sign of politics and balance, but it is debilitated. But as you look at her sun, and it's in the 5th house, I love the 5th house. The 5th house can definitely give some indications as to intelligence. This woman is extraordinary, very bright, full moon, extremely intelligent, with the sun in the 5th house. And of course, it sits next to Mercury. In Libra, always trying to find balance. This is a good sign for people in politics. So if the sun is so weak, being in the sign of Libra, I noticed, does the sun have a debilitation that is canceled? It does. Notice the sun being in Libra. Libra is ruled by what? Venus. So when we go to Venus, Venus is in Leo, which is ruled by the sun. So again, we have a parivartana with Venus being in Leo, ruled by the sun, and the sun being in Libra, ruled by Venus. So this exchange of signs, this mutual exchange of signs, puts what? The sun like it's in Leo, and Venus like it's in Libra. Wow, does that change the effects of these two planets tremendously? Yes, it does. And this gives the sun enormous power. And even to have her Venus in the 3rd house, she's great with communications in terms probably with the written word, not so much with the spoken word. She's got to watch what she says. But I think over time, she's tempered that and learned how to say things in a meaningful way where she's not so offensive. But Mars in the 2nd house can be offensive with words. But I love the fact that Venus is in Leo because that's extraordinary. It's even in the Nakshatra Purva Falguni, which is very, very expressive and creative. And in the 3rd house, the 3rd house is actually the house of entertainers. So I want to say she can act. She can entertain, and to have this ability is great because in order to really get people to listen to you, you've got to be entertaining. She has that ability. And very expressive. The 5th house as well as the 3rd house deals with writing and expression and creativity, which she has volumes of. But going back to what I think could be happening this year with the nodal axes. Now, I want to look going forward towards the election time to see what's going on in her chart. And in July of 2020, she is in the Mahadasha of Rahu, but her subcycle is Mercury. She just started the Mercury subcycle. July of 2020 will be in it till January of 2023. So Mercury is very, very important during this time. It is in the 5th house. That's a great blessing. 5th house is probably one of the best houses in astrology. It actually can deal with politics, as I said, and intelligence. And it is the house of advisors, people who give advice to others, especially to the kings, it says in ancient books. So if Biden is the king, she will be an advisor to the king. So looking at that though, thinking about where Rahu is about to transit. Rahu is about to transit into her 12th house when it shifts into Taurus and Scorpio after September 19th. And for her Mahadasha Lord to go into the 12th doesn't look like new beginnings. And at the same time, I was looking at the fact of where will Jupiter and Saturn be at the time of all of this political uproar, which I think she's going to be in an uproar. Why? Because I'm saying Mars is going to be stationing on her moon opposing her sun. That's what I'm talking about just at this time. But by the time of November, when we have Mars going back into the sign of Pisces, it will be in her 10th house, which is actually extremely strong. Yes, that will be nice when transiting Mars. Even though she's Gemini ascendant, Mars is not a great planet. But Mars in the 10th is extraordinarily powerful and gives a rise. But where will Jupiter and Saturn be? Now, transiting Jupiter is in her 7th house. That's very good for her, but it does empower the opponent. Remember, the 1st house is you, the 7th house is opponents. And Jupiter in Sagittarius is quite strong. But by the end of November, Jupiter will transit where Saturn is in Capricorn and will be in her 8th house. This is not good for the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction be transiting in the 8th. But on the upscale, and this is big, when you look from where her moon is in Aries, Jupiter and Saturn will be in the 10th house from the moon. This is very good. So here we got one thing saying it's bad, one thing saying it's good. This is the problem with astrology. You're trying to figure out what is stronger. And I will say, when we have the Jupiter and Saturn together in Capricorn, this will be after November 20th. And this is important because I don't think we're going to know who the president is initially. But and there's also a big change of the planets' signs in November, whereas we're going to have Jupiter change into Capricorn by November 20th. Okay, so together, this will be a big transformational change. And well, we're just going to have to probably look at Mike Pence's chart to get a better idea of what this means. So chalking it all up, transiting Mars in the 10th is great. But it will be 12th from the moon. Not so good. Rahu in the 12th. And K2 in the 6th, not so good. But we also have from the moon, Jupiter and Saturn are 10th from the moon. That is really good. And Rahu will be in the 2nd house from the moon. Always, always you have to analyze a chart from Chandra Lagna, meaning the moon as the ascendant, as well as the ascendant, which is based on the time of birth. So I'm kind of up in the air, but I do feel like something huge is going to be happening for her in September while that Mars stations on the moon opposing the sun. And Mars is very violent. Mars is very angry in Aries. And this may not be to her benefit at this time. She should be very, very cautious about what she says, because it could come back and bite her the way Mars is positioned during this time. I hope she has an astrologer. Okay, and now I want to put up Mike Pence's chart and realize we don't have his birth time, which would make a huge difference if I could see that. So this is kind of, well, iffy, but let's see what we can see. Now I notice his moon is in Gemini. Therefore, I'm going to make the moon the ascendant for Chandra Lagna. So they both have this Gemini influence, and Rahu is in Gemini, but it's about to shift into Taurus September 19th, which means it's going to be coming over his Sun and his Mercury. But they are 12th from the moon. Not so good. The transit of Mars, Mars is going to be in the 11th house and the 10th house from the moon, back and forth when it's in Aries and when it is in Pisces during the time of the elections. It's going to be in the 10th house, but around his Ketu. So he has Ketu in the 10th house from the moon. This is not so powerful, but I have seen this before in other presidents' charts. Ketu in the 10th house from the ascendant. As a matter of fact, President Kennedy had Ketu in the 10th house from his ascendant. But, you know, this is Ketu being in the 10th house from the moon. Mars is going to be close to this Ketu, but not quite. It's going to back up on the 14th of November to 21 degrees of Pisces, and his Ketu is 17. Not quite there, but still influencing it. Mars, he has natal Mars, his natal Mars, also debilitated in Cancer. And it's in the 2nd house from the moon. So he can say things that he doesn't need to be saying. And his Mars is not in Parivartana. I don't see the cancellation. As a matter of fact, just glancing at his Navamsha, he has Mars in Libra. Doesn't uplift or strengthen his Mars. So his Mars is weak. And that's not usually the sign of a leader. But consider this, to get as far just to be vice president or governor, that's pretty powerful. So there's something going on I'm not seeing clearly in this chart. It would make a world of difference if I had his time of birth. Now I also noticed that he has Jupiter in Scorpio and Kamala has Jupiter in Taurus. Their Jupiters are exactly opposed. But for Pence, Ketu will be on his Jupiter, and Rahu will be on Kamala's Jupiter, which I'd have to say Rahu being on Jupiter is better than Ketu being on Jupiter. So there's another distraction or minus for Mike Pence. And looking at where Jupiter and Saturn are going to be for him. Now, we only know his moon sign, and the fact that his moon is in Gemini also means that when Jupiter and Saturn are in Capricorn, this will be after November 20th that Jupiter goes into Capricorn and will join Saturn in Capricorn in the 8th house from the moon. This is not good. So maybe it simply means something about his running mate. Being in the 8th house is very, very difficult. And I don't want to make an assumption about anything because I don't have his time of birth, but I can say this. Both of their charts say something very difficult is unfolding here. And this will be an enormous fight, but there's going to be some changes that are going to shift everything. Everything is about to change. And from November to January, there will be a huge reversal. And even for Kamala, I'm seeing the reversal happen as soon as by the end of September, especially when Rahu goes into her 12th. But for both these individuals, this looks like, yes, this is a crazy time in the world. What a time to run for office. I actually don't know what I think. It is a very, very difficult time, and both of them are going to have a hard time here. It's not going to be easy. The world is changing, and they're right in the midst of this transformational change that will change their lives. So, putting them side by side, definitely Kamala has a much more powerful chart. Her chart it rocks, but let me just say this. The transits, she's going through a rough time with Mars. As well as, don't forget, the Jupiter-Saturn are going to be in the 8th house. So for either of these individuals, I'm seeing great difficulty, and I can't really get an assessment as to what's happening for either of them. But I want to say, after September into October, we'll know more about the status of how Kamala's going to look to the world after she states her mind. And maybe it is a powerful statement that can actually help her. But once again, both charts are plagued with problems. So we can analyze these charts more as we go and as things start to evolve. But for right now, I just wanted to introduce both charts and give my unbiased opinion, just looking at the planets and where the transits are headed and how it's going to affect their charts in the next couple of months. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, or you would like to sign up for my university, first go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org, and don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter. Or if you would like to study Vedic astrology with me, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.